I want to share a case with you today. Now, I'm not here just to tell you a story. I'm here as someone who has sat across from hundreds of women, heard their hearts break, watched them rebuild, and witnessed love arrive in the most unexpected ways. Emotional. And this case of this real human, deeply moving situation, it touched something in me that I feel compelled to share with all of you. Let's call her Emily. Emily Morrison was 24 years old, smart, disciplined, driven. She had grown up watching her single mother work 3 jobs to keep food on the table. And because of that, Emily had made herself a promise very early in life. She would not give herself, her heart, her body, her deepest self, to just anyone. She was going to wait for the one who was truly worthy, thoughtful. And then one Monday morning, she walked into the 45th floor of Pierce Industries in New York City, wearing a navy pencil skirt and carrying more hope than she probably realized. Her new boss was Jackson Pierce, self-made billionaire, one of the most powerful men in the city. And the moment their eyes met and their hands touched in that first handshake, Emily felt something she had never felt before. Something electric, something that scared her. "I expect excellence, Miss Morrison. I don't tolerate mistakes or mediocrity." That was his welcome. Cold, professional, controlled, and she matched him. "You won't find either from me, sir." For 3 months, they danced around each other like two flames that kept almost touching. He watched her when he thought she wasn't looking. Their hands would brush passing documents. The air between them crackled with something neither of them dared name. Ann Jackson had one ironclad rule: no workplace relationships, ever. Then came a Friday night in October. Emily's best friend Rachel practically dragged her to a masquerade charity gala at one of Manhattan's most exclusive hotels. Emily wore an emerald green gown and a peacock feather mask that hid most of her face. For one night, she wasn't the serious, responsible Emily Morrison. She was just a woman in a beautiful dress in a glittering ballroom. That's when she felt it. That pull. Across the crowded room, a man in a black tuxedo and a leather mask locked eyes with her. And the world went quiet. He walked toward her like he had been looking for her his whole life. "Dance with me." Not a question, a plea. They danced for hours. They talked in a corner, carefully avoiding names, avoiding anything that might break the spell. He told her about his love for architecture. She told him about her love for books, her small-town childhood, her mother's sacrifice. He whispered, "I feel like I've been searching for you without knowing it." And Emily, who had waited so long, guarded so carefully, felt the walls she had built around herself begin to come down. That night, she went with him, and for the first time in her life, she gave herself completely to someone. It was everything she had dreamed her first time would be: tender, passionate, overwhelmingly beautiful. She fell asleep feeling like she had finally come home, but when morning light came through the windows of that penthouse apartment, she opened her eyes and looked at his face, and her heart stopped. It was Jackson Pierce, her boss, the man she had been fighting her feelings for every single day. She scrambled out of bed, shaking, barely able to speak. He woke up and saw her, and she watched the same devastating realization cross his face. "This can't happen again," she told him, her voice breaking. "We were wearing masks. We didn't know. We can just forget it ever happened." And then she ran. Monday morning, Emily arrived at work in a gray suit buttoned up to her throat, as if fabric alone could protect her from what she was feeling. Jackson called her into his office. He stood behind his desk, distance between them like a wall, and said in a careful, controlled voice, "What happened Saturday night cannot happen again." She agreed, and then he said something strange. "There are things you don't know, complications that make this impossible." 2 days later, she found out what those complications were: a company-wide announcement. Jackson Pierce was engaged to Diana Ashford, daughter of one of the most powerful men on the East Coast. a strategic business merger, a deal that had been in negotiation for months. He had been negotiating an engagement while he was holding her on that dance floor. Emily felt sick, betrayed, even though she knew, logically, painfully, that neither of them had known who the other was that night. Then the nausea started. She dismissed it as stress, until she couldn't dismiss it anymore. 4 pregnancy tests, all positive. She sat on the bathroom floor with those tests lined up on the counter like a jury, and she thought, I am pregnant with my boss's baby. A man who is engaged to someone else. A man who is about to marry into a dynasty. Her friend Rachel found her there, held her, and said the words Emily already knew. You have to tell him. Before she could find the courage, Diana Ashford walked into Pierce Industries. Blonde, polished, expensive. She kissed Jackson's cheek with the ease of ownership and smiled up at him with practiced warmth. And Jackson, Emily watched carefully, Jackson did not pull Diana closer. His face remained neutral, but still, the message was clear. That evening, Emily typed her resignation letter. A mutual friend of Jackson's, Thomas Reed, met her for coffee the next morning and said, He's miserable. The engagement is a business arrangement. His board pressured him. I have never seen that man happy in my entire life. Not until you came along. Emily shook her head. He made his choice. Thomas looked at her gently. Did he? Or did he just take the path of least resistance because he's afraid? Still, Emily placed her resignation letter on Jackson's desk and began clearing out her things. And then Jackson stormed out of his office, letter in hand, face raw with barely controlled emotion. You can't leave. I can, and I am. Something cracked open in him then. He told her the truth. All of it. That from the moment she walked into his office, he had been falling. That the night at the gala had felt like finding something he had been searching for his whole life. That every day since, choosing Diana over her had been tearing him apart. I was a coward, he said. I kept choosing the safe path instead of the right one. But losing you is worse than any business deal. Worse than disappointing my board. Worse than anything. And then Emily told him her secret. I'm pregnant. He went completely still, and then, slowly, with eyes full of wonder and terror and love, he asked, Marry me. Not because of the baby, because he loved her. Because he had been in love with her since she walked through his office door. Because that night at the gala wasn't a mistake. It was fate finally getting them to where they were always supposed to be. He ended the engagement to Diana personally. He faced the board. He stood in front of cameras and took Emily's hand and told the world he was choosing love. The headlines were not kind, but Jackson never wavered. They married quietly 2 months later. Thomas was the best man. Rachel cried through the whole ceremony. Emily's mother sat in the front row with tears of joy for a daughter who had waited and been found worthy of the wait. 6 months after their wedding, a little girl arrived. Dark hair, her father's determination, her mother's gentle heart. They named her Grace. Because it was Grace, Emily said softly, that brought us together even when we tried to stay apart. And as Jackson held that tiny baby, this man who had built an empire from nothing, he cried. Openly, completely, without shame. That is the case I want to discuss with you today. Before we go further, if this story is already speaking to something in your heart, please take a second and hit that like button and subscribe to this channel, because what comes next is even more important than the story itself. Stay with me. Now, my friends, let's put on a different lens, because this story is beautiful, but it is also packed with psychological truth. And I want to walk you through it carefully, because every woman watching this today may recognize a piece of herself somewhere in Emily's journey. First, let's talk about what it means to save yourself. Emily's choice to wait was not about rigidity or fear. Research in attachment psychology tells us that women who grow up watching a parent sacrifice, as Emily's mother did, working 3 jobs, often develop what we call a heightened value protection response. They internalize the message that love must be earned, that giving yourself to someone must mean something. This is not a flaw. This is wisdom encoded in survival. But here is what Emily also experienced: the emotional tension of attraction without permission to act on it. For 3 months, she worked side by side with a man who made her heart race, and she told herself every day, he is off limits. He is my boss. This is not allowed. Do you know what that kind of suppression does to the nervous system? It creates what psychologists call cognitive dissonance, the painful gap between what you feel and what you believe you're allowed to feel. Emily was carrying that weight every single day. And many of you watching this right now know exactly what that feels like. Then came the Masquerade Gala. And here is something remarkable about that night, psychologically speaking. The mask gave Emily permission. When we remove the labels we carry, employee, responsible adult, the girl who waits, something in us unlocks. This is why therapy retreats, creative workshops, even carnivals have always had a kind of liberating effect on people. Anonymity temporarily suspends our self-surveillance. And in that suspended state, Emily encountered someone her soul recognized before her mind could stop her. That recognition, that inexplicable sense of, I know you, though I've never met you, is not fantasy. It is what neuroscientists call resonance. When two nervous systems that are fundamentally compatible encounter each other, there is a measurable response. The body knows before the brain catches up, and then the morning after. The mask came off, and everything crashed. What Emily experienced in that penthouse when she saw Jackson's face is a phenomenon called identity collision. The intimate stranger became her boss. The dream became a professional crisis. Her body remembered tenderness while her brain screamed danger. This kind of emotional whiplash, going from the heights of vulnerability and connection to the crash of reality, is genuinely traumatic, even when nothing bad happened in the traditional sense. She did what many women do in that moment. She ran. She armored herself in a gray suit. She tried to make professional what had become deeply personal. And then she found out she was pregnant. I want to speak to this part very carefully because some of you watching may have lived a version of this story. Maybe not with a billionaire, maybe in far less glamorous circumstances. But the emotional architecture is the same. When a woman discovers an unplanned pregnancy in the middle of a relationship that has no clear future, she enters a state that psychologists call anticipatory grief. She is grieving a version of her life that she hasn't lost yet, but can already see slipping away. She is managing her own fear while simultaneously calculating the emotional safety of every person around her. Emily's instinct was to disappear, to protect Jackson from the complication, to raise the child alone rather than be anyone's burden. Hear me when I say this. That instinct, while it comes from a place of love and self-protection, is also a symptom of what we call self-erasure. When a woman has been taught, consciously or unconsciously, that her needs come last, she will sacrifice her own future to avoid causing inconvenience to others. That is not strength. That is a wound that looks like strength. Now let's talk about Jackson. Jackson Pierce is what many in my field would call a duty-bound man. He built an empire alone, which means he learned early that emotion is a liability and responsibility is a virtue. His engagement to Diana wasn't cruelty, it was the logical extension of a life lived entirely in service of obligation. But here is the psychological reality. Duty without desire leads to a kind of quiet suffocation. Jackson was, as his friend Thomas put it, miserable. He had everything the world said he should want, and felt nothing until Emily. What Emily awakened in Jackson was not just attraction, it was permission. Permission to want something for himself, permission to choose his own life. And that terrified him, because men who have lived by obligation their entire lives don't know what to do when love arrives without a rule book. His initial choice to proceed with the engagement was not malicious. It was fear dressed up as responsibility. And the moment he chose differently, the moment he stood in front of the cameras and took her hand, that was one of the most psychologically significant moments in this entire story. Because it was the moment Jackson Pierce chose his own heart, possibly for the first time in his life. Research on life satisfaction consistently shows that people who make major life decisions from external pressure, social expectations, financial incentives, family obligation, report significantly lower long-term happiness than those who make decisions aligned with their inner values. Even when those decisions are harder and messier, Jackson's board was not wrong that ending the engagement would have consequences. It did. But the data on his soul told a different story. And little Grace, born into a family that fought for each other, is the living evidence of what happens when two people are brave enough to choose love over convenience. Now, this is the part of our conversation I want you to pay closest attention to, because this is where we make it about you. Some of you watching are women who have been Emily, who saved yourself, who waited, who guarded your heart with everything you had. And then life brought you someone or something unexpected. And maybe it didn't go the way it went for Emily. Maybe your story is still in the middle chapters. Maybe you're sitting there wondering if you waited for nothing. Let me speak to you directly. You did not wait for nothing. The woman who knows her own worth, the woman who does not give herself away to whoever happens to be in front of her, is not a woman who will be easily discarded. Your patience is not weakness. Your standards are not arrogance. They are the scaffolding of your self-respect. And no one can take that from you. But here is where I also want to gently challenge you. Saving yourself is beautiful. But saving yourself out of fear, closing your heart so tightly that love cannot even knock on the door, that is not virtue. That is armor. And armor eventually becomes a prison. Emily was not merely waiting because of principle. She was also somewhere deep down afraid. Afraid of being ordinary, afraid of choosing wrong. And the mask at the gala was not just a costume. It was the universe giving her a way to bypass her own fear long enough to feel what was real. Ask yourself, where in your life are you wearing a mask? Where are you being professional or responsible or fine when underneath you are longing for something more? What permission do you need to give yourself to be fully alive? Now, I also want to speak to those of you who have been betrayed, who gave your heart or your body to someone who was not who they said they were, who found out, like Emily did, that the person you trusted had complications they didn't tell you about. Here is the psychiatric truth about betrayal. It does not just break your heart, it breaks your ability to trust your own judgment. That is the real wound. Not, he lied to me, but how did I not know? What is wrong with me that I couldn't see it? Nothing is wrong with you. You trusted because you are capable of love. That is not your flaw. That is your power. But here's how to protect that power going forward. Pay attention, not to what a person says, but to what they do when it costs them something. Jackson, to his credit, did not just tell Emily he loved her. He ended an engagement. He faced his board. He stood in front of cameras. He chose her publicly, at great cost. Words are free. Watch the actions. That is where the truth lives. Now, for those of you who are in the middle of a difficult season right now, I want to give you something practical, something you can hold on to. The first is this: do not make permanent decisions from a place of temporary pain. Emily almost disappeared. She almost took herself and that baby and vanished from Jackson's life because she was in the sharpest kind of grief and couldn't see clearly. Whatever you are facing right now, a broken relationship, a betrayal, an unexpected situation, give yourself time before you make a choice that cannot be undone. The fog always lifts. The second is, find your Rachel. Emily had a friend who sat with her on that bathroom floor, who held her while she cried, who told her the truth gently but firmly. If you do not have someone like that in your life, I want to encourage you, with everything I have, to seek community, a therapist, a support group, a trusted friend, a faith community. Isolation is the enemy of healing. You were not built to carry things alone. The third is, do not let fear make your choices for you. Jackson almost let fear choose for him. Emily almost let fear choose for her. Fear will always make the conservative choice. The safe one, the quiet one, the one that requires nothing of you. But the life you deeply want requires you to be willing to risk something. Not recklessly, not without wisdom, but with a hand on your heart and a willingness to step forward anyway. And finally, to those of you who love a story like this one, who watch these videos and feel something stir inside you, I want to say this. The reason stories like Emily and Jackson's resonate with us so deeply is not because we are silly romantics. It is because we are human beings who fundamentally believe that love should win, that good people deserve good outcomes, that waiting for something real is worth the pain of the wait. That belief is not naive. It is one of the most psychologically healthy things you can carry. Studies on resilience, on what allows people to survive hard things and come out whole, consistently find one factor at the top: the belief that life can be good, that something better is still possible. Keep that belief. Guard it as carefully as Emily guarded her heart. And when the right moment comes, when someone worthy of you shows up and is willing to choose you, at cost in public for the long term, you will be ready, because you have spent this whole time becoming the woman worth choosing. Thank you for being here with me today. If this conversation touched your heart, if something I said landed somewhere real for you, please leave a comment below. Tell me what you're holding right now. Tell me what you needed to hear. I read every single one. And if you haven't already, please like this video and subscribe to this channel. Because every week we come here together, not just to tell stories, but to understand them, to learn from them, to grow through them. You are stronger than you know, and the best chapters of your story are still being written. I'll see you next time. Take care of yourself. You deserve it. You